Hello, hello. We are back here for another episode of that 90s Baseball Pod. I am your host, Brandon Warren, and you can find me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE. And across the screen from me is former big league righty Gregg Olson. You can find him on Twitter at GREGGOLSON30. How are we doing today, man? I understand you have a new family member that you might be able to introduce us to.
Yeah, I do. We're trying to figure out a name for him. I'm kind of leaning towards Crash. And here he is.
That looks like a Crash to me.
He does look like a Crash. He's a Bernese mountain dog, about 8 weeks. And he just made a mess in the house. So I'm sitting on the back porch.
Yeah, ours is 12 weeks. His name is Rocco. We didn't talk about him last week, but he is, and I'm not going to move my camera, but I'll have him on. I'll hold him up sometime when he's allowed to be out during the program, which right now is not the case. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff going on. A lot of exciting stuff going on in baseball. If you're watching the YouTube, you can actually see I've got my playoff beard going on already, which is it's really got to go, but my wife has been too busy to cut my hair. So that's a good thing. She started her own thing. She's got her own salon. If she's too busy, that means that she's doing good. But
that's really good.
It's for the detriment of our live stream. And so I apologize for that. But if you are listening on Patreon, thank you so much. You're getting this episode early and ad free. If you're not, I did put together a little ad package. I don't know, Greg, if you heard it, but I did the Baseball Tonight music underneath it. So I thought maybe you'd appreciate that.
I like that. Well done.
Yeah. So you can check out some of our sponsors there. We are powered by Access Twins. I'm rocking the Access Twins jacket and hat today. As you can see, this is why I don't wear hats forward, though, because my big old melon does not look good in small hats like that. But did you receive that 90s Baseball Pod hat yet?
I did. I got it yesterday.
Right on.
Looks
okay.
Good. Very nice.
So if people are interested, they're gray. The Access Twins ones come in black, gray, and charcoal. But if you want that 90s Baseball Pod one, gray only, $20, just hit me up on Twitter and I'll get you all squared away. But we had a fun episode last week. Greg Swindell was on, and before that, Ben McDonald. Have you heard any feedback about how people have felt about having big leaguers on like that? Because I think I'm working on one more right now that I think he responded this morning. We've been talking about it back and forth, you and me. I think we got a chance to reel this one in.
Oh, good. Yeah, I got one or two ideas on some guys, and then we'll see how that goes. But it would be one of my favorite pitching coaches, and it would be appropriate, with what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. Might have him see when he can come on. He was traveling last week, so he couldn't do it, but I haven't gotten any feedback, negative or positive. I think it'd be kind of fun to, get some viewpoints of some guys that I don't know. You know what? You mean, unless you're following Twitter, you're not going to see Greg Swindell much unless you're following the Longhorn Network.
Right.
And, Ben McDonald's on Twitter quite a bit and doing a lot of the Orioles stuff and ESPN. So you'll see him quite a bit, but he doesn't always chime in on baseball. So it was kind of fun having him on.
Yeah. And so people, if you like the show, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening. If you don't like, hit me in the DMs and we'll work on improving to suit your needs. But before we get going, it is I guess it's not technically the eve of the postseason, but it is the precursor. We've got the wild card games coming up here. And so first of all, we've got the Red Sox Yankees we can talk about a little bit. Also 2 Dodgers and Cardinals. First, I want to ask, though, with this postseason, are there any connections or ties that you have that you're really monitoring closely? Because I feel like as a baseball guy, even though you haven't played in the big leagues for a few years now, the web of connections in baseball is always spiraling out. And so you probably have some people you're rooting for in some form or fashion.
Yeah. There's always somebody. It's the people that I played against now are the coaches, managers, and or played with. So yeah, you got a little bit of guys that you follow, check in on. But I think once Adrian Beltre retired, that was the last of my former teammates.
Wow, that's quite a web, though. We should sometime find out the oldest and youngest of your teammates, because sometimes it's fun to see how wide that span reaches. You know, you get a Satchel Paige in there, or you get a Julio Franco in there, and it really stretches out that web for who they played with and when they started versus when they finished. But I personally like the Red Sox tonight, and I like the Dodgers over the Cardinals, but there's just something about those Cardinals. In fact, I was looking up the Cardinals and found an article about you and a picture of you in a Cardinals uniform. So that was kind of cool. But that's who I like. Who do you like for the wild card games?
Oh man, Yankees are scorching hot. At least they were. So I'm kind of leaning towards them. Man, Dodgers are tough. Yeah. That's what I'll stick with.
It certainly hurts the case for the Red Sox that JD Martinez is out after tripping over, I think it was second base. So he's not on the roster for the game. And so that's going to be difficult, but they are at home. So you got that benefit. I actually suffered a similar fate one time. So I never hit a home run in a game that counted. I've hit them in softball. I've hit them in BP, but I hit an absolute rocket shot in a game in Wisconsin one time. And this guy goes back and Willie mazes it over his head. And dejected, I walk off the field and trip over first base. So I can, I go from the pinnacle of I just about hit my first ever home run at age like 28 or 29 to flat on my face in the span of about 10 seconds. That's quite a comeuppance, I have to say.
That is pretty good. Yeah, tough break for JD. I'm trying to run through the scenario of you getting robbed. Didn't drop your head because you would have noticed first base. So trying to kind of run through what that looks like.
It's not good. It's really not good. But live to fight another day. The thing that I'm trying to manifest into the universe, and I don't have this kind of power, and frankly, I suspect you don't either, is I would love to see Tampa and the Giants play in the World Series. It's a 1-versus-1, which rarely happens. It's like when you pick your Monday or your March Madness brackets, and if you end up with all ones at the end, you know you're not going to win because it never seems to go that way. But I feel like Tampa and San Francisco would be just such a unique World Series. They both had such awesome regular seasons. There's a fun story there. I mean, nobody believed that the Giants could beat the Padres, let alone the Dodgers. And Tampa Bay just finds a way to do it every single year. What World Series matchup do you think you would find most compelling between what AL and NL clubs?
I got to be honest with you. I would find the Rays San Francisco pretty intriguing. Really hard to look at San Francisco like it's a lower payroll team, but in the grand scheme of the NL West, they are. And like you said, they were probably picked to finish last by all the pundits, or close to, with Arizona having such the year that they had. I think that'd be a pretty good World Series to watch.
Yeah, and San Francisco has kind of done it with this recipe the past few times they've won the World Series. And actually, what kind of surprised me is towards the end of the season, I saw a tweet that said Brandon Belt had, I think it was 28 home runs at the time. That was the most by a Giant since Barry Bonds had retired. And I had to go back and look, and I was like, that can't be right. But then I start going through, kind of rolling backwards, and I'm like, well, Buster Posey's a catcher, so he probably didn't play long enough in a season to hit 30 bombs. And otherwise, you had these weird years where guys like Cody Ross pop up and have a nice season, or Brandon Crawford has a nice season, Joe Panic. So, like, I looked and I'm like, you know what? That's right. They've never had a guy hit 30 home runs since Barry Bonds retired or was ushered out of the game in free agency that year. But they have that feel like they've had in previous years when they've won the World Series, where it's just a team of, the sum is greater than the parts, or I don't know how you quite put it, but I get the sense
you nailed it with that one.
Yeah, I get the sense that they could make some noise.
I'm kind of running through it. You're going Hunter Pence, not a really big bomb guy.
Right.
Posey,
Belt himself
never put the bombs together. I never looked at Belt like he was a big home run guy.
No, he's like that 15 to 20 guy if he were to stay healthy, and he gets on base, and I think he's a pretty good defender, kind of like an Eric Hosmer with less name recognition.
Yeah, exactly. Then you start going through it, and it's like going, okay, tough place to go deep at night.
Yep.
It's always cool, cold, heavy air. And man, I'm going back. They had Mark Burrell for a couple of years, and he was a power guy in the middle.
Pat Burrell.
Pat, thank you.
Yeah.
I got Mark. I'm thinking of Mark. And then
Aubrey Huff, he who need not be mentioned.
No, Pablo Sandoval.
Yep, he could hit.
Probably got close for a couple of years.
Yeah, probably 24, 25 in there before he went into free agency.
So you don't want to do an Aubrey Huff version?
No, maybe we'll see. We could have Kurt Schilling and Aubrey Huff and just go scorched earth.
Yeah, we'll leave the politics out of this this equation, but I didn't think anything about it. When I was like, threw it out there, and somebody on Twitter was going, "Oh yeah, Brandon, no, that wouldn't go good." And I was like,
no,
okay.
honestly, it would go fine. People think they know what I believe politically, but they have no idea because I don't talk about it. So, it would go fine.
Better. Yeah, the one or two times that I've said something, and it's like, it's not even worth it.
Oh yeah, no, it's better left unsaid. No, people have no idea what I believe. They think they do, but they don't. And so today I've been kicking this around for a little while, and it's kind of a foundational thing for a pitcher, their relationship with a pitching coach. And so I kind of wanted to get down to the nitty gritty with you. We've talked about, was it Al Jackson that you had in Baltimore?
He was my first pitching coach when I came up in 88, 89. Yeah.
So you got the first, you got the ones that are more legendary. You've got the ones that you worked with for multiple years versus 1 year. There's a lot of meat on the bone. So I thought, we'll talk about it, what it's like to have a pitching coach relationship with a pitcher, how maybe you had some better ones. I'm not gonna say you necessarily ever had a bad one because I don't know, but it's two grown men having opinions. It can probably be a little contentious, but for where I want to start. So you said your dad coached you in high school, correct?
Correct.
So when did you have your first formal person who was dictated as a pitching coach?
Probably when I got to college. I there's a guy named Gene Hines that lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Okay.
And he played in the Dodgers chain and had worked with Sandy Koufax, or played with him, throughout. I don't know exactly the whole background of the story, but he lived in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which was right across the river from Omaha. Got to know my dad, was one of those pro guys that always gave back and would, come and help guys. And so he started teaching me the curveball, or teaching my dad the curveball. And so I don't know if, you can call that a formal pitching coach. It's not like today where I can go give lessons to anybody and everybody if they want them. He would just come by, and we would work on the breaking ball. He came up with using the can for tennis balls, and just, trying to create the spin that you would on a curveball, using that so you can see it. Taping two baseballs together, a Coke can, whatever, to learn how to create the spin. So that was really the first guy that I kind of, outside of my father, tinkered with some stuff. And obviously that one paid off in the long run with the ability to throw the curveball. But I probably look at it and go, when I got to college here, and we were talking about possible guests. He did not play in the big leagues, but had an effect on a lot of big leaguers. That I was thinking of my college coach Hal Baird maybe coming on, because he is a wealth of stories. Had Frank Thomas, Bo Jackson, myself in the late 80s, as well as a couple other big leaguers. My college roommate Stacey Jones, and then taught Tim Hudson. So had a bunch of major leaguers, and like I said, a wealth of knowledge. You might be an entertaining guest at some point.
Well, we always like those. Did it give you a preconceived notion of what your relationship would be like with a pitching coach, or when you went to school, did you have were you eagerly anticipating having a pitching coach, or were you not even really thinking about it?
Wasn't really thinking about it. It was just a relationship with my dad that you didn't change aspects of. You didn't think about it, in terms of a relationship with other people. And so when I got here, Hal Baird was the head coach as well as the pitching coach, and it was a relationship with a head coach as much as a pitching coach. It was, I don't know. I don't think I really had that relationship until I probably got to the big leagues, or at least I got drafted by the Orioles, and then Dick Bosman was the minor league coordinator and ended up being my pitching coach later on in Baltimore. But so he was kind of the first one where, strictly a pitching conversation.
Yeah. Is the instruction different in college as opposed to, I mean, you don't really have to talk about the minor leagues because you were only there for a cup of coffee, but the big leagues, what was the instruction different? Because you're talking about in college, I mean, you're technically a man, but you're still kind of young to the game. You're a young man to the game versus the big leagues where you're, like managers say, if you don't like it, you can go play in the next league up. Oh, wait, there's no next league up. That's one of my favorite lines. I'm trying to remember.
That's one.
I can't remember who I heard that from. It might have been Buck Showalter, if I'm being honest. But
If you don't like this league, go play some. Wait, there's not another league up.
Yeah. Was the instruction? Did it have the same basis, rooted in kind of thing, or was it you're learning the game versus you're honing your game?
That great question. I think the instruction at the college level is more basic because it needs to be, you got kids that if you're sitting there, if you watch the Auburn LSU football game this weekend, you saw Bo Nix and running all over the place and getting by with athleticism and making throws that you don't see on Sunday, unless it's Kyler Murray. And so, and so same thing in high school baseball, the college baseball. I got to the SEC. I couldn't get away with doing the high school stuff. I couldn't get away with, every once in a while deciding to drop down and throw a sidearm thing just because it felt like it would be interesting.
Or an automatic curveball on 0-2.
Yeah. And so your work with your coaches is more basic at that level because I think back in the 80s, 90s, we didn't have a pitching coach for every 12-year-old kid. Mechanics are a mess, and you can come from a high school that they didn't have a guy who really understood pitching. So your mechanics are a mess. So you got guys that are getting here going, needing fixing. And I needed work offensively, defensively, pitching. And so when I got here, it was an overhaul on a grand scheme.
What is the pitching coach situation like with Team USA, where, I mean, they're instructing you, but they're not really building you up for your future in the sense of multiple years? With college, it's multiple seasons. With the big leagues, it's as long as you're on the team. But with Team USA, it's the rest of the summer.
You know what? The Team USA aspect equates to minor league baseball now.
Okay.
Minor league baseball now, they'll draft a guy in the first 10 rounds and he'll get into the minor leagues. And it was an interesting, although I don't know how to, I don't know my theory on it. It's difficult. But so when I was scouting with the Padres, they had one or two guys, and they had one in particular that they were trying to rush through the minor leagues because he was going to blow out.
Yeah.
His mechanics were awful. His stuff was unbelievable.
So like a Joel Zumaya kind of thing.
Yes, he's going to blow out. It's going to be a matter of time. It's not an if, it's a when. And I'm kind of sitting in the room, and they're going, we kind of need to push him through the minor leagues. And I'm sitting in the room going, why don't one of your geniuses fix him?
Yeah.
And they're like going, and they kind of hem and haw, and find out later on that the theory was that they'd rather a guy go as far as he can go with bad mechanics, and then he gets to AAA and he fails because things don't work, that well. And so then he'll be more open to getting fixed, as opposed to right when a guy gets drafted, his mechanics are awful, and somebody going, okay, we're going to fix him now. And then all of a sudden, if he doesn't make it, apparently he'll look back on the rest of his life and blame that guy, which I don't even think is really a rational argument, but
No.
it's an interesting chicken or an egg theory. And that's what I was saying about Team USA. It's like, you're not going to go there. And I was lucky enough on the 87 team, Jim Morris, who was the head coach of Miami for, a very long time, Georgia Tech before that. He was our, pitching coach, and great guy. We would talk pitching sequence. We would talk over the hitters. We'd talk in between innings, but there was never a mechanical conversation. Okay. I'm here for a reason. He wouldn't dare send me back to Auburn having fixed my landing leg or something, that could be a catastrophe if it doesn't work.
So you're just picking their brain basically, but not instruction.
Not physical instruction. I mean,
mental, like maybe mental approach.
Yeah, mental approach. But I mean, there's nothing. The only way that what I was describing as, getting fixed was physical.
Mm-hmm.
You can, I have no problem walking up to a guy and saying, hey, why don't you try to hold your curveball this way? Or why don't you think about, creating spin on your cut fastball this way, or something like that? Because that you can easily go back.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and then all of a sudden, if you go change your golf swing, and it takes you weeks or months to figure out where you were and what you're doing now. And
right.
And is my best analogy.
Did that guy ever make it? I have a sense. I have a sneaking suspicion I might know who that was if they made it, but I'm curious if that guy made it.
He did. Kind of seventh, eighth inning guy for a couple years.
I think I know who it is.
Never heard from again.
Do I dare guess? Am I allowed to guess?
Yeah, but I'm not quite 100% positive on his name. So go ahead.
Was it Carter Capps?
No.
Okay. Carter Capps strikes me as that kind of guy. That was the guy that had that hop delivery on the mound. And so I thought maybe that's who it was. But
no, this was a Dominican kid, mid to upper 90s fastball, all arm, very little body. And, I think he got a year or 2 years, kind of the late bullpen.
They don't make too many like that. So that's I kind of understand where they're coming from, but I do definitely agree with and appreciate your viewpoint. So I've seen you do some YouTube videos where you've done instruction, and then too, you did have a bit of a participating role on the show Pitch. What has your history of instruction been like? And would you like to coach at any high level from this point on?
Yeah, I've helped out forever, at the high schools. I'll help out here. I was the undergrad student assistant for the University of Auburn, or Auburn University, excuse me, back in, was it 18 or 19, I think. Mm-hmm. And Tim Hudson and I are close friends, and I'll get out there here pretty soon to start. He and I are different pitchers, and he is open to me coming in and helping out when I can. Yeah, I'd be open to doing it. I did an interview with one or two National League teams a couple years ago, and their whole thought was contingent on me learning all the analytical side of it, and after the game looking at spin rates, and then sending all the faxes up to the front office with, here's what he did, here's how the success rate on this breaking ball. And I'm just going, well, yeah, but okay, so I sent all those up to you, and then what are you going to do with them? Because you can't fix him.
Right. It's kind of
You
your
know,
job.
I was like, I can fix him, and I don't need the spin rates because I can see that the breaking ball either worked or didn't work, and I can tell him why it worked or didn't work, and we can have a conversation. But if I send them up to you, what are you going to do with them, other than call me and tell me to fix him? So it just seemed like a big circle of the way that they're, you expect baseball to be working now, highly analytical, with people that are creating numbers to show them what they can't see.
And what'd you do on pitch? I have to ask you.
That was a good one. We so Chad Kruder, former catcher, was my partner on a baseball academy out in Southern California. He worked on Moneyball with Brad Pitt and a guy named Mike Fisher. So Mike Fisher kind of does all the commercials for sports. He did Longest Yard. He did Glory Road. Any sports movie, he is a background guy. He'll find the extras. He'll find, the people that are in charge. So he hired Kruder for Moneyball, and the Kylie Bunbury, the actress on pitch, didn't like the pitching coach that they had worked with, and they were getting ready to start shooting down in San Diego at Petco Park. And I think is it still Petco Park?
I think so. It's, these things change.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've already talked about that, but so it was like a Wednesday night at 4:00, and I get a phone call from Kruder going, "You're going to get a phone call in about 5 minutes from this guy named Mike Fisher. Here's who he is." And he goes, "Just take the call." And I was like, "Okay." And so Fisher calls me up. He goes, "Hey, they just fired the pitching coach that was kind of a well-known guy in the LA area, because she didn't like him, and they're getting ready to start filming the pilot. It's going to be 12 days down in San Diego. Can you go?" I was like, "Yeah." And so got down there, and Kylie, Mark Paul Gosselaar, Mo McRae were the three main actors, and got down there the first day on set and started playing catch and started kind of teaching them how to play catch. They'd been working with this pitching coach for a month or two, and their mechanics were pretty, but they weren't functional.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went to play catch, you didn't stand behind anybody, and you didn't stand within about 8 feet because they couldn't catch and they couldn't throw.
Wow.
So it was entertaining. And then we kind of got things going. And I got to be honest, man, that first day on set, when they had some off time, they were down there playing catch. They must have thrown for 8 hours and just worked hard, did the pilot. It was good. And then, had the summer to start filming, and they met me 3 times a week up in northern LA. And, we played catch, we threw, we hit, we did everything. And, they were awesome to work with. And that was what I did. I was just kind of like the baseball instructor.
So you kind of have a special appreciation for when a guy like Charlie Sheen looks good on camera throwing the baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think For the Love of the Game is probably one of my favorites. And Costner's really good. I think that the people that put the background together on it was phenomenal thought processes when he's on the mound. It's fun for me to watch. And so that was kind of what I was doing on the TV show Pitch. Was they would send me the script, and I'd send it back and go, okay, line 42 on page 3, this is what would be said, not this. And for the most part, they didn't question me or get mad at me. They just kind of slashed it and edited it and put it in the way I said that this is the way they would say it. Mm-hmm. So that part of it was really cool.
Yeah, that's one thing that gets me with different forms of media, whether it's a baseball video game where they don't quite get how good a player is or not good a player is. And, when it's a TV show and it's not inside baseball terminology. And it doesn't have to be so far inside the game that people like me wouldn't even understand it. But you want to make it feel genuine to people who know enough about baseball to know what that's all like. So I have an appreciation for that too.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Got to, every time Kylie would be, thrown off the mound and at Petco or Dodger Stadium, they'd break to move the cameras to a different angle and then, do it again. And she'd call me over and ask me a couple questions. Okay, what's my thought? What am I doing here? And I felt like a pitching coach, honestly, the way that she went about her work of, why do I keep missing up and into righties? It's just like, okay, this is what you probably need to do to fix it. And she'd work on it and try it. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Got to be kind of unique though, for it to not be contingent on results in terms of facing hitters, but in terms of what it looks like on camera, which is kind of a funny way to think about it. So you get to the big leagues and you start working with Al Jackson. How did that relationship evolve, and how did your relationship with your college coach prepare you for that? Because again, too, we've talked about the difference in those relationships, but I have to imagine at least there were some common threads, because pitching is pitching, it's interrupting timing, it's keeping guys off balance. There's a lot of common threads to pitching across all levels, but how did that relationship evolve in the first, few months or maybe a year?
What, it was different than my college coach. My college coach and I, this kind of had a different relationship. But when I got to Baltimore, Al was great. I think he was preparing me for the rest of my life and letting me know that a lot of my thought processes weren't really correct. And there wasn't a whole lot of mechanical stuff. It was just, discussing hitters, discussing, what my sequence was. And then, when I came up to the big leagues and all through my whole life, I kind of worked backwards. I was like, okay, I'm going to strike you out. So how do I get there? And so that was my whole thought process going through my rookie year. My second year was, okay, if I'm going to strike you out, how do I go about getting to the end result where I got two strikes and like a 0-2 or 1-2 count? And so I'd be like, okay, I need to probably start here and then get to here, and then I can go here and here to strike you out. And that was exactly the way I thought about everybody. And Al Jackson's like, yeah, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, why? And so a lot of our conversations were, yeah, you can't do that. And why? And then so we would have that conversation of where he's preparing me for the rest of my life of pitching, of, yeah, I can't go about trying to strike out the whole world. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with, if I'm out there for 2 innings trying to get a first pitch ground ball to shortstop, just to try to get an easy out and take the load off and keep my pitch count down.
So were you a closer in the wrong era then?
Man, yeah, this thought process would have been a lot of fun right now with everybody. Before I got hurt, I'd give up maybe 1 home run a year
and strike out a guy in inning.
Yeah. So I wouldn't give up not very many home runs. So I'd get a lot of nice fly balls and strikeouts.
So they didn't have ground ball or fly ball rate back then, but you would have been a fly ball guy.
Yeah, I mean, I threw a little bit of a 2-seam, what they call a sinker, but it didn't. It only induced ground balls from left-handers that were trying to pull it, and it would end up getting rolled over to second base or sure. Shortstop. But it wasn't a big ground ball guy.
Well, good thing you had a pretty good shortstop. How long did it take before you were comfortable with him to kind of share your views and that sort of thing? I mean, obviously you were a headstrong player in the sense that you stormed into Frank's office early in your career, but how did that relationship evolve from? I mean, I'm assuming he wasn't there that whole time you were in Baltimore.
No, Al. I think Al got fired either end of 91 or in the middle of 91 with Frank Robinson. And then Dick Bosman came in. Al and I had a good relationship. He was just a super nice guy. He pitched a long time in the big leagues. He understood how to get guys out. He was a positive guy. He was never harsh, never, always had a laugh or a smile, just a really solid guy. So it's hard not to like him, hard not to have a conversation, hard not to pick his brain on something, even though, he was probably, I hate to use the phrase, a soft throwing lefty. He didn't throw real hard. And so we didn't have a whole lot in common, but he pitched in the big leagues and he understood how to get guys out. And in the end, his, way of working hitters and getting guys to swing early in counts wasn't the worst thing,
How influential is the first pitching coach you have in the big leagues, would you say?
You know what? I think it's kind of like your teachers in school. You start and somebody gives you something in second grade, and then somebody gives you something in third grade, and then
so it's not just the first. Okay.
Not at all. And so there were guys, I was lucky enough. I had, Bruce Keeson, who passed a couple years ago and was a solid guy that, pitched in the era of the early 70s with Pittsburgh, and just had a viewpoint that is completely and utterly gone from the game, but it worked. And, then another guy that I think would be fun to have on, Mark Connor, who was my pitching coach in Arizona. And I probably still would say that one of the smartest pitching coaches that I had been with. And so you just pick up stuff from guys, and then there's some guys that you just don't really hit it off with, and you don't pick anything up.
Okay. What does the pitching, or what did the pitching decision tree look like back in those days? Like, so the Twins have Wes Johnson as their pitching coach, but they had Bob McClure as like a senior advisor. You've got these guys who are kind of synonymous with pitching coach roles in the sense that they've been around, but they're advisors as opposed to coaches. And then, you've got these, some teams bring in these gurus and all that stuff. What was it, just Al Jackson at the top and then everybody else fell in line beneath that? Or how did that work in terms of a decision tree back in those days?
I mean, are we talking about through the minor leagues, or there was no other pitching guy? We didn't, it's not like the Twins have Bob McClure and, they bring in Wes Johnson, who's got no major league experience whatsoever.
Right.
And that, that situation would never have happened. And I always found, the time that we met in Minnesota, I found it intriguing to watch that relationship, because, you got a guy who was a college coach that went straight to the big leagues. I'm looking at the big league pitchers going, how much are they listening?
Right.
And I'm curious, and I wonder if that's why they brought Bob McClure in, because it's hard to argue with him with his track record and past history at the big league level. And so, I mean, some of I hate to say it, you just kind of look at aspects like that, of where you got a guy who had never done it at this level telling you how you need to be doing it. And there is some pushback. And right. So I'm not, and even some guys that did it at the big league level, made some suggestions to me over my career. After I got hurt, I became mediocre, and, found ways to get guys out and found ways to stay on teams. And I had some suggestions from some guys that it was just like, we're done. That was really stupid. I'm having a hard time trusting you right now. And so there is that aspect. And that was what I was, kind of saying about Wes Johnson. I was curious when I was there, just watching, mound meetings, and if I could see a little bit of the bullpen and what's going on in the dugout. It was curious to me.
What's the delegation of duties, at least as far as between a bullpen coach and a regular pitching coach these days?
Well, it was the bullpen coach running through Elrod Hendricks with my guy in Baltimore for almost 6 years. He was a catcher that, was smart enough to know when I was off or when something wasn't working quite right. He could give me a little something, but he would know that I was off.
Mm-hmm.
And, then I move on, and Ned Youst was a bullpen guy in Atlanta, and I'm kind of running through it, and most of them were catchers. And
right.
The whole reason for that was, good, solid guys, mainly the catching instructor, and they could catch, guys in the bullpen so that the team wouldn't be having, the second catcher go running out during the game, or, have to buy a bunch of bullpen catchers, and so a lot of them the bullpen guys ended up being catchers. So there wasn't a whole lot of instruction. It was more just
filling a role.
Yeah. We're not filling a role. I mean, they had a role of the catching instructor,
mm-hmm.
at the big league level, which is a huge part. Obviously now, if you're watching the big league games, how bad the catching has gotten.
Yeah.
I think we might need more of them, but it was a spot. They answered the phone. They kept the bullpen in what's going on, and who might be coming up and where we're at. And so there was the baseball conversation part of it, but there wasn't a whole lot of instruction. So the pitching coach is usually the main guy. Not very often do you have, and I'm running through it. I don't think I had a pitcher that was a manager. So pitching coach is the dude.
Mickey Callaway is the only one that comes to mind, and we all know how that went.
Well, Bud Black.
There you go. Yeah.
Bud Black was very intelligent, but like I said before that.
Bob Lemon, was he?
No, outfielder.
What am I thinking? He was a pitcher. I don't know why I was thinking he was a pitcher, but
good name though.
What?
Good name.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
Chet Lemon? No.
Chet Lemon was an outfielder.
Yeah, that's where we're mixing up.
Okay, because I think Bob Lemon was a pitcher.
Yeah.
Okay.
All I got is Bud Black right now.
Yeah, no, it's not many. It's not many at all. You mentioned Jackson getting fired. What do you make, or what do you think of how temporary it seems like coaching jobs are in baseball? The Twins just had.
Sorry, missing the dog.
No, it's all good. Bill Evers retired after 30 some odd years in the game, but he was only in that role with the Twins for like 3 or 4 years. And then you see, people already want to talk about Rocco Baldelli getting fired, even though he led the team to back-to-back division crowns, had an off season. It just seems to me like that lack of stability is actively hurtful in the game, but I suspect you could have a much more pertinent viewpoint.
I mean, it's every coaching job in sports now.
Mm-hmm.
It's temporary. You don't see guys coming in and staying for a decade. It's just the way it is. The team doesn't have patience.
I don't like it.
Well, I don't either, but it's all of a sudden it's like, like they didn't think Showalter could do the rebuild with the Orioles, and he was more of a veteran guy. And I was like, well, he completely built up the Arizona Diamondbacks in '98. He was the guy that built the whole Yankees thing.
Yeah, he handed him over to Joe Torre, didn't he?
Yeah. And so I'm like going, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then you just hear the reasoning behind it. Oh, the message is getting old. Or I love that they're blaming pitching coaches, or Chili Davis gets fired from New York, and what their batting average drop another 9 points. I mean,
that happened in San Diego too. They fired their pitching coach, and then it was a Larry Rothschild, and then they went like 9-24 the rest of the way with a 5 ERA.
Larry, I had Larry. Larry was the AAA guy in Atlanta in '94.
Legendary name.
And he ended up moving on and having I mean, obviously he just got fired this year. So 94 to
27
now.
years. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're firing a guy who's got that much knowledge, who actually pitched.
Stupid.
It's not his fault. I mean, that would be me giving up a 2-run lead in the 9th inning and the pitching coach getting yelled at for it is stupidity. I'm a grown man. That all I'm doing is I'm sitting in the bullpen and we're trying to fix what's going on with your problems, or we're discussing, like Gregg Swindell said last week, Nolan Ryan's working through the next game and going through the lineup, and that's what you're doing as a pitching coach. And then you're sitting there in the dugout and having a mild conversation, but to blame the pitching coach or the hitting coach for a team is just throwing somebody under the bus.
Well, and we're repeatedly told how it's a game of failure, and yet we lose sight of that. I mean, if there's 2,500 big league games played, there will always be 1,250 winners and 1,250 losers. You can have a tremendous at bat and be out. You can hit the crap out of the ball and a guy makes a 100th percentile play and you're out. It's not wanting it more. I think people just lose sight of that. There's a winner and a loser on every play. There's a winner and a loser in every game. And like, we always are searching for, well, why did this happen? Because it had to. Somebody had to win and somebody had to lose. That's just how it is. And I feel like that seeps into our baseball intellect or lack thereof for how we view the game now. And we don't let people fail. And again, I'm probably sounding like kind of an old man, get off my lawn kind of thing. But we talk so much about how it's a game of failure, and yet we're afraid of the failure still.
I think it's a lack of patience. You look at the head coaches getting fired. Like I said, Chili Davis is one of the smartest guys I've been around hitting wise, and he gets canned. And I'm looking at the guys with the Mets going, it's not his fault.
No,
I guarantee, I'm firing a hitting coach if he's not meeting my guys in the cage at 1:00 if they want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm firing him for that. If he's not able to give you any decent drills or something to, move you out of what you're doing wrong or your rut, then okay, we'll have that conversation. But to fire a hitting coach or a pitching coach because the team's ERA is a 5.2, we need to be looking at the front office and who we have pitching.
Yeah.
Or who we have hitting. It's not that hard.
I mean, your team can have a 5.2, but if you've made two guys way better than they were before, and some guys are sliding, maybe it's their work ethic and you're still doing your job. I mean, it's way more than just surface level. And I think we lose sight of that as fans, as analysts, even baseball men in the game. So again, it's a brief aside, but just something that drives me crazy that I see on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So in your estimation, because you obviously, and we beat this drum a lot, you didn't start a game in the big leagues, but how did a relationship, or does a relationship, vary between a starter and a reliever with a pitching coach?
Oh, I think the starters have much more of a relationship on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
There's the conversation day after, there's the conversation 2 days after, there's a bullpen side. Maybe day 4 start, they're going to sit there. The pitching coach is going to lead the pregame meeting. Whether the starter for the next day sits in there, I think they should. I don't know if they always do.
Right.
So there's almost a day-to-day contact where I can go a week and not have any meaningful conversation with a pitching coach. And it's not the worst thing. It's just, it is what it is. I had some great conversations with Mark Connor, while I was kind of getting my legs back underneath me in 98.
Mm-hmm.
Loved him during the time that I was struggling in 99. He was there to talk and run through things. And most of my guys were. I had John Matlack in Detroit, and he helped, give me a change up. You just have guys that are there around, a lot of the conversation is, hey, how you feel?
Yeah.
And it's just, I threw last night and, I'm giving you I'm good to go or I'm not good to go. And this is, the extent of the conversation.
How different was the relationship between a pitching coach you had for multiple seasons versus one season or part of a season? Like you would have, I think Dick Such would have still been with the Twins in 97. So again, that's maybe not a good example because you weren't there half a year or anything, but even just let's say you were you with Atlanta a full season? I'm trying to remember, like, was Mazzoni there at that time?
No, not really. I mean, we went on strike, so I only had Mazzoni for 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. So how did that level of multi-years versus 1 year versus a few months, how did that all vary?
It's a trust that's gained over time.
And you don't get that time sometimes.
Yeah, sadly, I think the only guys that I had multiple years was Al Jackson, Dick Bosman. Bruce Keeson was with Kansas City both times that I was there, 95 and 97. And then I had Mark Connor in Arizona. I had 2 different pitching coaches in LA. So yeah, I didn't really, get a chance to build much, but the relationships I had with Al Jackson, Bosman, and Mark Connor, even Keeson, Keeson was still, I don't even know if I was with him for a full year, but it was just time spent, and I'd see him, as a visiting guy, and I just you build a strong bond with the guys because you're there day to day, and you're fighting for the same thing. You're fighting to win, and they're here to help me. And if something comes up, I got their back.
And I don't ask this in a joking sense, but to what extent are they your baseball psychologist or psychiatrist?
There is a big piece to that. You got to find somebody to talk to. Sometimes you got a teammate that you can dump everything on. Man, a lot of times, the younger guy, it's falling on your pitching coach, and they build a relationship through that of him giving wise advice. And I mean, man, it's on the field, it's off the field, it's girlfriends, it's, it can be a bit of everything. It's that type of relationship.
So they say, this is an old adage, but those who can't do teach. Did you ever notice any difference between guys who had been good pitchers and guys who hadn't versus pitching coaches? I mean, there's I'm sure a reason why Mike Maddox is a legendary pitching coach, but Gregg Maddox is a legendary pitcher, or, Mel Stottlemyre, had his role, or a lot of the pitching coaches were not household names as pitchers. Did you ever notice any kind of pattern there, or is it all about just kind of what they have between the ears?
I think it's what they have between the ears. I mean, I'm thinking Bruce Keeson was a good, solid pitcher in the early 70s. John Matlack. I mean, Al Jackson, got a lot of time or a little bit of time with the Mets.
John Farrell was one that was around for a while.
John Farrell I played with in Detroit, and he was smart. And at that point in 96, he didn't have great stuff, solid, kind of an Andy Bennis, 4-seam, straight fastball, and, relied on the location and the change of speeds. But the can't do, so they teach. I think I'm a good teacher at this craft because I had to evolve. I had to learn. I had to
make mistakes and fix them, or get hurt and fix it.
Yeah. So, some people said Frank Robinson wasn't a great manager. I think he had a hard time understanding, the failure rate.
Yeah. Ted Williams, same thing.
Yeah. And so I think there's an aspect of that. I don't know if I take offense to that phrase, but, I feel like I could do it, and I feel like I can teach it just because I've gone through a lot of it and had to, constantly self-evaluate, self-teach, learn, and do different things to survive. And so, some of the guys that maybe, like I said, John Matlack, solid, major league guy, Keeson, Al Jackson, not household names by any stretch of the imagination, but probably pitched long enough to go, okay, this. And then you play with Mike Mussina or Rick Sutcliffe or Ben McDonald, and you start running through it, Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, and you pick up things. My father is still, doing pitching lessons and has guys in college baseball and some throughout minor league guys that he never pitched a day in his life. And, was a catcher in the minor leagues with the Yankees for a year and ended up being a high school coach and then a little bit of a pitching coach at Creighton University. Mm-hmm. And all he did, he talks to this day of, we're playing in a golf tournament with Trevor Hoffman. And he grabs Hoffman on like the third hole with a golf ball and he goes, show me how you throw your changeup. And he spends the next 14 holes picking Trevor Hoffman's brain, and he hasn't forgotten it, and that was 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. He hasn't forgotten that minute and everything that Trevor said. And then I'm talking breaking ball, and Sutcliffe is talking rhythm and working hitters and all these things. It's not necessarily what you do, it's what you learn, because I don't have all the answers, but I've played with a lot of guys who can fill in blanks.
Well, one thing that drives me crazy, and it's mostly watching football, but to some extent baseball too, is when people blame coaching. Oh, they got out-coached. And in your estimation, what percent of what you did was you versus the coach? I'm assuming 80-20, some kind of, obviously there's some effect that they gave you, but the idea that the coach takes the fall because a guy jumps for a false start drives me absolutely bananas. You don't need a coach to tell you not to mess up the snap count. I don't understand it. Am I completely off here, or to what extent did you feel like they gave back to you in that 100%? Were you 85 and they were 15? Were you 80 and 20? How did that in your mind equate?
From the pitching side of it, it was 100% or 99 and 1. It was, everything we were doing was us. And, the lead up into it was, the bullpen and getting things squared away was the coach. So we'll go 95-5.
Yeah.
If a game got screwed up, it was 100% my fault.
Right.
It wasn't coaching. It was me making a pitch selection or me not making a pitch. The football side of it, you can kind of look at, and if, another team pulls out a whole different offense and starts doing something that they've never done before, then you go, okay, they got out coached. Baseball side, man, you don't see guys getting out coached very often. Mm-hmm. It's, they let you lay down a bunt, or you do a hit and run.
Maybe put a guy out on the on-deck circle to bluff, something like that.
Yeah, or pin, and it's a pinch hit. So,
yeah,
the really good ones know where the game's going to be going and are prepared for it. But the normal fan's not going to be able to sit there and go, in a baseball game, they got out coached.
Yeah.
And you just can't, because it's going to be one move in the 7th inning that was, that might have been the break in the game, and who's going to see it?
No, nobody on this side of the fence anyway. Just a couple more things before we let you go, if you're still doing good on time, I hope.
Yeah, you're the one that's got the workout.
I definitely do. What was a typical Mound visit like? I think we've talked about this before, but what was a typical Mound visit like with, any one of your pitching coaches?
Most of them were, trying to get myself back on track. So if I was,
I suppose too, there weren't that many, because if you had a Mound visit as a short inning reliever, you were probably in hot water.
I was in way hot water.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was, you're flying open or you're missing high, let's make an adjustment on this. And then I either do or I don't. And
or we're sandbagging to get the next guy hot.
Not very often.
Okay.
I was lucky enough to kind of be in it, and I wasn't out there where guys just out there stalling and standing there. I can't ever think of one, honestly.
Well, you closed a lot, so probably not, obviously.
Well, yeah, and if the game's over by the time that I screw it up.
Right.
The managers, I mean, I remember Frank Robinson coming out a couple times.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was pretty good. He actually looked at me one time and he came out and we were in Kansas City my rookie year and I was making a mess. And he just looks at me and goes, "You see all these gray hairs? They're all because of you. You're killing me." And it was comical, terrifying because he said it with a straight face. And I'm 22 years old, just looking at him going, because I'm making a mess. I'm in the middle of a mess, So the last thing you want to think about is that I'm making Frank Robinson gray and old. Showalter had a good one coming out where he, first and second in Shea Stadium in '98, and Lenny Harris lays down a bunt, really good bunt down the third base line. I go plant to get it, both feet slide out underneath me. I can't make a throw because I'm sitting on my butt at home plate. And so I got bases loaded. I think it was a 2-run lead. Day game, Sunday, and so Showalter comes walking out, which was pretty rare. And he just comes out and, whole infield's in there. And he just looks at me. He goes, "We're going to have a whole lot of fun getting out of this." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, good message. I like that. I can appreciate that." And so it was, I ended up ground ball to second base, got that pop up, strikeout, only gave up the 1 run and we won and kind of looked at Buck afterwards. I was like, I like that. That was nice. So
yeah, that's good vote of confidence.
you get some, I maybe one, I can't even think of it. If there was one of getting lit up by a pitching coach or a manager, but those happen. Most of the time those happen when you see him tell the infield not to come in.
Right. What makes this is a wide open question, so take it wherever you want. What makes a good pitching coach?
Intelligent, knows the game, knows the 12 guys on his staff that and knows them well enough that conversation about their girlfriend, conversation about their mechanics, conversation about what they're working on. Yeah, I mean, that's about it for me. It's knowing your guys, intelligent, always ready to work. And those guys, you can sit in the bullpen and you can tinker with your mechanics. If something's just a little bit off, we can talk about how to get Barry Bonds out. If that conversation comes up, we'll have a laugh with you. A couple of them will sit down and have a couple beers with you and talk and like I said, a psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever else is needed to get you off a cliff.
What makes a bad pitching coach?
Somebody who thinks he's got you all figured out.
That's just bad in baseball in general. If you think you have the game figured out, you have a lot more to learn than you thought.
Yeah, but I mean, just, not a whole lot of a two-way conversations about things,
So no curiosity, no creativity.
Yeah, I feel like, by the time that I'm kind of running through things, I'm in year 7, 8, 9. I had things to offer in a conversation. And if there wasn't ever any conversations or it was a one-sided, this is what we need to do, didn't really float my boat. Trying to think of, I mean, really, that was it. I had a couple guys I really didn't dig. And I'm not going to say any names, but it was just, you think you know me, you think you got me figured out. You don't, you're wrong, you're way off. And we're not building much of a relationship.
Well, and especially at that point in your career when you were moving around a bit, it would have been hard to figure you out anyway, because there just wasn't that much time, let alone the fact that, the game is as complex as it is. What I want to know too, what takes a good pitching coach to a legendary one? We talk about Mel Stottlemyre, Don Cooper, Ray Searage, all these guys over courses of,
yeah.
What takes a guy from good to legendary?
seems like staff, timing, the ability to take somebody that is broken and then he comes over to you and all of a sudden he's winning 18 games.
Mm-hmm.
You
take a non-tender and turn him into a Cy Young candidate.
Yeah, kind of a horse whisperer, where it's like, somebody that attracts people, like, that will come over to the team that are broken, that are, veteran guys that need to be fixed, and they'll come over just for that.
Kind of feels like San Francisco's that right now with what they've done with Kevin Gausman, especially, but they tried to do it with Aaron Sanchez. They had a few guys that they've turned around, and I think Pittsburgh was that way for a while when they were in the business of contending in the Central about 10 years ago, when they turned Francisco Liriano around, maybe tarnished their reputation a little bit that Garrett Cole left and got better. But it's always intriguing to me to see what makes a great pitching coach take it up to the next level. We all know about Tom House and the footballs that he had the Rangers pitchers throw back in the mid-90s. Did you ever have any pitching coaches that had unique methods, or what's the most unique method that you can remember?
I didn't. Mazzoni had his way of doing things, and, was very stubborn with his conversations on breaking balls. And it was kind of interesting, but hard to spend a whole lot of time arguing with him when he's got Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox. Yeah. So I really didn't have anybody that was kind of off campus and trying to invent stuff. I had kind of Guy Hansen, who ended up being pitching coach a little bit with Kansas City, I believe, was a little quirky and had some different ideas, but for the most part, they were based on an intelligent theory.
Yeah.
And I found most of them were fairly accurate.
Is there any part of instruction today, though, that you think has improved since you played, or things that you would wish had existed when you played? Obviously you talked about the methodology or the idea behind striking everyone out. And again, too, uniquely knowing that ideally your role in today's game would be getting out of the game with a win in 10 pitches or fewer, striking out the side, whatever. Is there anything that pitching coaches are doing now, or that you see now, that you'd have been like, man, I would have liked to have had that?
I think all the video capabilities, to be able to slow down, break down mechanics, the Rapsodo, to be able to break down the ball out of the hand, the spin rate stuff would have been interesting for me, just to tinker with grips a little bit more than just going feels good, doesn't feel good. I've thrown 10 of these two seamers with my grip this way, it ain't working. Mm-hmm. And not getting any other feedback other than my catcher going, yeah, isn't that great? So some of that stuff, the spin rate, the Rapsodo would have been interesting.
But I suppose at the same time, too, the fact that you didn't have it didn't change the fact that nobody else had it either. So
you didn't know it existed. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's all I have for this week. Is there anything I left on the plate that
I think so. Dude, you're awesome. You really are.
Well, I appreciate that. Hopefully people agree that we're awesome, and check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Libsyn. Give us 5 stars. We still have to give away a couple baseballs. I'll send some baseballs to your house, get you a label so you can send them to me if that's okay.
Right.
We'll have that happen. But again, patreon.com/that90sbaseballpod. We have a $3, $5, $10, and a $25 tier level. If people don't know, I named them MLB Journeyman, Rookie of the Year, All-Star, and Orioles Hall of Famer. I have no idea where those could have come from. They're just random, obviously. So again, thanks again to Gregg. Thank you so much for coming on this week. I don't want to spill the beans too much, but we're trying to get a former big league catcher who caught at least one no-hitter that I can think of, but maybe more. Knock on wood. I'm hoping he'll come on here in the next couple weeks. But until then, thank you so much for coming on. I think these one-on-ones turn out pretty good too.
No, this was fun. Fun. You did a great job of questions.
Well, take good care of that puppy and let us know what the name is. I got to take Rocco out here. I think Crash sounds great though. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to That 90s Baseball Pod powered by XS Twins. We'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Thanks.